The proposed rule is a reasonable way to ensure gainful employment for students, and I applaud the administration for taking on this difficult battle, especially for minority students, to ensure transparency and protect taxpayer funds. I urge a no vote on the amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois rise?
To strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the Klein amendment. It is imperative that Congress put the brakes on what has become this administration's culture of runaway regulation. Specifically, the amendment under consideration will prohibit the use of funds in the underlying bill for the implementation of a misguided regulation commonly referred as to the gainful employment rule, which has already led to job loss and uncertainty in the proprietary college sector. Moving forward, I'm concerned that this rule will jeopardize access to many educational and training programs that provide students with skills to meet the demands of an ever-changing labor market. In function, this rule would prohibit college programs from receiving federal student loans unless new, complicated loan repayment criteria are met. As such, the rule incentivizes institutions to pursue only those repayment plans which satisfy arbitrary government goals rather than the plans that best fit students' needs. This narrow focus on loan repayment also ignores measures of seemingly equal importance such as on-time graduation rates and career placements. Equally troubling under the rule, proprietary institutions would sadly be forced to navigate an additional restrictive layer of federal bureaucracy requiring federal approval in order to offer any new program. Unfortunately, this provision fails to realize it is the agile nature of these proprietary institutions that uniquely positions them to help unite a properly equipped workforce with employers in today's uncertain job market. By unduly restricting the flexibility, we risk failure to capitalize on emergency economic opportunities. Moreover, the gainful employment rule applies almost exclusively to one sector of higher education, the proprietary schools, which tend to teach job-specific skills, often to at-risk populations such as low-income, minorities, single parents, high school dropouts with GEDs, and first-generation college students who do not have financial help from parents. Somehow there is a notion that the bad actors of the federal higher education loans is exclusively within the proprietary college sector. This is preposterous. But the fact is that the administration has chosen to discriminate against these schools. The fact remains a student can graduate from any institution of higher education with inadequate income to repay their debts, and students should not suffer simply because the school that best suits their needs operates under a for-profit model. I have repeatedly asked the Department of Education to refrain from implementing this rule until we have clear data on the state of the nation's overall higher education system. If the administration were serious about addressing unscrupulous recruiting practices at the college level, this data would be compiled and made public, and particularly and available to members of Congress. As it stands, we have little more than this singular last-minute vote to slow down the administration's race to squeeze the for-profit sector out of existence. And I would yield back.
Gentlelady yields back her time. What purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Move to strike the last word in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to point out a few important facts about this, the for-profit educational sector, and that is that the low-income students make up half of the enrollment for for-profit colleges, and minority students comprise about 37%. So this really is a matter of low-income and minority students facing what are high-cost loans for students, and often 90% of the money comes from the federal government. Now, as I listen to my friends on the Republican caucus, I would think that they would want the best value for the public dollar. This rule means that some money spent will result in the outcome that's sought in the beginning, which is gainful employment. Too many of the students who go to these schools are coming out with nothing other than big debt and no education, no gainful employment at all. And this is a problem, and I'm surprised that we would not say that, look, we are going to make sure that when the federal dollar is put forward, there will be value coming back for it. Now, I'm no opponent of for-profit colleges. I think ones that are performing well are certainly welcome in the market and serve a valuable role. But there are bad actors, and I think it's important to point out we have seen this movie before, Mr. Chair. We've seen it when people said, look, poor people, low-income people of color need to get mortgages, and, well, you know what? They can get subprime mortgages. Now, not all subprime mortgages were predatory mortgages, but some were, and enough were to be able to take advantage of people on a very severe scale. This rule, if it goes into effect, if allowed to proceed forward, would make sure that these students and the government get good value for their money, and no for-profit college that is not relying on a business model that bilks the consumer, the student, should object. No college, no for-profit college that relies on a business model that actually is designed to help the students they propose to help should object to saying, look, we're going to deliver on what we say we're going to deliver, which is gainful employment. This is no friendly thing for the poor and low-income students of color. This is an abuse. Not all for-profit colleges, but some. And the federal government has a responsibility to make sure that these students are not taken advantage of. By the logic of some of the proponents of this amendment, we should say that, look, any loan shark, pawn shop, payday lender, we ought to just thank them because, you know what, they serve the poor. Well, they better serve the poor in a fair, scrupulous way and not take advantage of people in a circumstance where they are at a disadvantage. So I urge members to vote this amendment down and to allow the proper rulemaking procedure to go forward. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I rise to support this amendment. This so-called, quote, gainful employment, unquote, regulation is another example of this big federal government run amok. Today, Hoosiers in Indiana and all Americans are free to choose from accredited colleges and pick the one that they believe fits their needs. These are accredited colleges. No one's accused them of unfairly serving the poor. No one rightfully has, or anyone else. They are accredited. They are licensed. The federal government gets involved in student loans and grants already, more so, I would say, than I and others would like it to. But at least, Mr. Chairman, we still let individuals make their own decisions on where to go to school. The new rule makes a mockery of our American tradition of free choice, replacing it with a bizarre program where the federal government decides what job you should seek and what school you can attend. Let me walk you through it. Under this rule, the Obama administration has proposed a plan that, number one, creates a matrix that examines the student loan debt to future income of a prospective student. Then it compares that ratio to the student loan repayment rates of graduates of the same program. And number three, and finally, it decides if the student can have access to the loans they would need to attend the school or program of their choice. So, for those of us listening, watching at home, what this means is, if you are contemplating going to school so that you can economically better yourself, or because you otherwise want to enrich your life, you just can't go to the college or school of your choosing if you need a government loan. Instead, a nameless, faceless bureaucracy, using some bizarre, arbitrary formula, gets to decide whether or not you have chosen a field of study that will pay enough to justify the investment in the minds of that particular bureaucrat. Unbelievable. The government and the Obama administration are now micromanaging this part of our lives, too. Talk about central planning, Mr. Chairman. And to make matters worse, this new program will disproportionately hurt Hoosiers and other Americans who are least able to do anything about it. Working Americans who need new training and new skills to move forward in the workforce. This is what this Congress should be about. If this regulation becomes reality, it will immediately prevent 400,000 people from developing new skills to benefit the workforce. By 2020, nearly 5.4 million students will be denied the higher education program of their choice. In a global economy, we cannot compete without an educated and flexible workforce. This amendment will allow Americans the choice they deserve and the education and flexibility our nation needs. I urge a yes vote, and I yield, sir.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move to strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise today in strong opposition to the Klein, Fox, Hastings, and McCarthy amendment that would stop the Department of Education's proposed gainful employment regulation. For-profit colleges account for only 7% of the higher education student population, yet last year 44% of student loan borrowers who defaulted within 2 years of beginning their repayment were students who had attended for-profit schools. Now, Mr. Speaker and members, I know something about these private post-secondary schools. One could make the argument, and you will hear that, oh, not all the schools. Of course, not 100% of the schools are rip-off schools, but a huge majority of them are. I have experienced some of this firsthand. While I was working with poor students in South Los Angeles, we were trying to get them into GED classes. The recruiters would come along and tell them that they could get them into their schools, they could help them to get Pell Grants, and they could help them get a career. And lo and behold, they would sign up. And you would see them a few days later. Some were going to be dental assistants, and they had a little green jacket on, and they had a little box that they carried to make it look as if they were carrying dental tools. But it was just a matter of months later when you would find sometimes the school was out of business, they had been going to school, there were no teachers, there was no equipment, they were rip-off schools. And I want to tell you, they make a lot of money. Take a look at this one school, Capella. They earned $335 million in profits. 78% of that was government money. Now, my friends on the opposite side of the aisle will have you to believe they want to save the government money. They want to make sure that they do everything to protect the government from spending the taxpayers' money unwisely. Something's wrong with this picture when they take the floor and argue for the continued rip-off of our students and our taxpayer money to these schools. Let me tell you who some of them are. Corinthian, bad reputation. Everest, ITT, Westwood, and guess what? Kaplan University. Guess who owns Kaplan? The Washington Post. You think the Washington Post makes most of its money from the newspaper? You got another thought coming. Their profits and their revenue, for the most part, is coming from Kaplan University, who have been found to have done all kinds of things to get these students in, charging them high prices for these classes. They're not getting jobs, they don't get a career, and they end up not only owing the government money, but they're prevented from having a decent quality of life because now they can't get a Section 8, they can't get another Pell Grant, and you know what? In many states, they're going after Social Security money and retirement money. This is the next big scandal in America. You think that the meltdown that we just had and the foreclosures that we're experiencing across this country is bad. You wait until the investigations are done and the truth is told and the amount of money is counted about the rip-offs. Now, I know that this is a powerful lobby that I'm working against. I understand that. They roam these halls, and they've got plenty of resources, and they put out plenty of materials. They buy full-page ads. They're up on television. The Joe Blow School of Computer Learning that has no schools. I want to tell you, I understand how tough this is. But what I don't understand is how they could be joined by people who claim to care about the taxpayers' money and claim that they're fighting to reduce government, when in fact they're supporting the rip-off schools that's increasing the amount of Pell Grants that we give to schools who will not get any jobs or create any careers. This is not right. We should not have to suffer this kind of misrepresentation. Our members of this House should be in support of students who want to learn. The worst thing that can happen to students who drop out of school, to students who haven't made it, to all of a sudden think that somehow they're going to get into a job and get into one of these rip-off schools and get disappointed time and time again. I know what populations they're targeting. I see them. They're targeting the welfare mothers. They're targeting gangbangers. They're targeting all kind of people that they know are going to have a difficult time succeeding. So you keep doing it because it's going to catch up with you. And I would ask that this amendment not be supported.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word in order to rise in support of Amendment 214.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the President has promoted a policy to have 5 million new college graduates by 2020, and I commend the President for that goal. However, I have to stop and wonder, how are we going to achieve the mission if the Department of Education is going to put up roadblocks such as the proposed rules for gainful employment? In reality, career colleges serve many purposes and many different people from all walks of life. This is not an issue of black or white, or rural or urban, young or old, or Republican or Democrat. This is an issue of access to opportunity. I represent a very rural district in Pennsylvania. Many of my constituents don't have access to a community college, and they live a significant distance from any university. Many proprietary schools have sprung up out of necessity. Many students in Pennsylvania choose these schools because of their convenience. They realize that career colleges offer coursework of all types and work to accommodate the busy schedules that we all have. They realize that life does not just stop for 4 years so that you can go to a school. And they realize these institutions will give them the skills they need to enter the workforce and earn a decent living. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I have concerns that the Department of Education has stepped way beyond its authority and has begun determination of an arbitrary ruling on gainful employment, and I ask my colleagues to support this bipartisan amendment, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
I thank the Speaker. I move to strike the requisite number of words.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this amendment that will prohibit the use of funds by the Department of Education for its misguided gainful employment rule. Perhaps it would be helpful for the body and the public to know what this gainful employment is that we are talking about. Under the Higher Education Act, proprietary colleges and universities and career training programs are required to offer programs that lead to gainful employment in a legally recognized occupation in order to participate in the federal student aid programs. The term gainful employment has been in the statute for over 40 years, and during the most recent reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, there was absolutely no debate or discussion on a need to further define the term. Now, when this originated, several of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and I'm deeply appreciative of the chairman and my colleagues, in a bipartisan fashion, we went about our business trying to understand just what kind of proposed rule it is that the department is talking about and just how it is that it will impact the overall public. What this amendment would do was prohibit the use of funds for implementation of the draft regulation that the department issued on October 29, 2010, and will prohibit the department from promulgating or enforcing new regulations regarding gainful employment. Now, let me put a face on these schools, as my colleagues that are opposed have done. Perhaps some of them have never eaten at a restaurant that the person that prepared the food went to a proprietary institution. I have. Perhaps none of them have had physical therapy where the persons administering it graduated from proprietary schools. I have. And most importantly, I want this body to understand that the 8 people that had the last hands-on experiences with my mother for 2 years, that all were nurses in 2 different hospitals and at home, graduated from proprietary schools. Now, we all agree that both taxpayer funds and students' best interests should be protected in higher education, but I can tell you this, rushing into a blanket approach that will limit student access to higher education and fail to adequately address problem institutions is not the way to go. You know what we did here in this institution? What we did here for the people that work with us, young people that graduate from Ivy League schools, historically black schools all over this place, we created a program that will allow them to help pay off their student loans. Some of us hire people at what I would not call gainful employment that may have graduated from institutions that I attended or that the president attended. Now, I don't understand why the department refuses to recognize job placement, professional certification passing rates, employer verification, or anything else related in determining an institution's effectiveness. It is unreasonable if it's unreasonable amounts of student debt that they're trying to address, well, I agree that that is a concern. Let's then have a frank discussion on student debt. But it is not only the institutions that are responsible. Students, lenders, policymakers, as well as institutions must be part of this process and must be held accountable. This proposed rule is very broad, and its implementation so burdensome that many schools will undoubtedly close. And I don't buy into that fallacious argument that 50% of these people don't graduate or don't go on to do this, that, or the other. In this economy, in the United States of America, a whole lot of students are graduating from a whole lot of schools and are not getting jobs today. And many of these schools that we are attacking unreasonably are places where I know, at least in the congressional district that I'm privileged to serve, that many of these people have received jobs, and many of them leave the institutions. I like the last 2 nurses that worked with my mom that had a job when they left the institution. This may please some of my friends in this body as the Department of Education, but what will happen to the single mother looking to change careers who needs the flexibility of a private sector college? What about the first-generation college student who needs the added support? Mr. Speaker, I urge that we support this amendment, and I thank my colleagues.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I'll just take a minute just to say that I rise in support of the amendment. If the department wants to issue a rule, do a rule that actually targets the abuses rather than takes on a segment of the industry that may or may not be complicit in the kind of allegations that are there. This is overly broad. Let's have them go back to the drawing board and actually target abuses that occur, not a segment of the industry that's actually providing services. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Arizona yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise in strong opposition to the Klein Amendment. And although I know that career colleges play an important role in higher education, I cannot support this amendment, and I cannot support it because the scope of the prohibition is too broad, and the timing of this amendment, that is, prior to the release of any final regulation, preempts the traditional regulatory authority. Together, the amendment's comprehensive ban on the department's ability to implement, administer, or enforce any current, pending, or future regulation of gainful employment inappropriately and prematurely restricts the responsibility of the administration to regulate institutions of higher education. In the many meetings I have had with career college stakeholders, each one of them have admitted that they are bad actors. Despite this uniform recognition, this amendment would tie the hands of the Department of Education from any effort to encourage these schools to improve their practices and protect their students. I support career colleges, yet I am resolute in my belief that the federal government has the responsibility to protect students and hold institutions of higher education accountable, especially those that access public dollars. I stand with over 50 civil rights groups, historically black colleges and universities, and student groups who support strong gainful employment protections for students, including key civil rights groups such as the NAACP, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and the Children's Defense Fund, the three HBCU advocacy groups, NAFIO, the United Negro College Fund, and the Thurgood Marshall, key education groups such as the American Federation of Teachers, the NEA, and the Council for Opportunity in Education. Let's be clear and make no mistake. The Klein-Fox Amendment is not about protecting low-income students. If that was the case, then those concerns would have been expressed by not cutting Pell Grants for over 1 million students by approximately $845 per student. If the goal was truly to support low-income minority students, the CR would not have cut $200 million in institutional aid from nonprofit HBCUs, predominantly black colleges and universities, and Hispanic serving institutions. If the goal was truly to help low-income minority students, the CR would not have cut $44 million from Gear Up and TRIO, programs that are designed to help first-generation students prepare and succeed in college. The reality is that this amendment completely stops the Department of Education from any form of oversight of career colleges that educate 10% of higher education students, receive approximately 24% of federal grants and loans, and account for 48% of loan defaults. I say let's slow down the process. Let's stop now. Let's give the Department of Education an opportunity to review its work and come back to us with some regulations that takes care of the needs of students and not protect just the institutions. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment. For what purpose the gentleman from New York rise? Gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
I've got an amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I strongly support the Klein-Fox-McCarthy-Hastings Amendment, which would prohibit the use of funds by the Department of Education for the implementation of the Gainful Employment Act. I am concerned that if this rule is implemented, it will apply an unnecessary broad brush approach to a complicated situation. This rule, if implemented in its proposed form, will effectively close high-quality programs while leaving programs of questionable value open. So this is not the way to deal with this issue. We all know that a college education, whenever possible, is one of the best paths a student can take to secure employment in a time when our nation's unemployment rate is just under 10%. And in some communities, it doubles that, let's not close off any meaningful job training programs. The department should not forget that these programs serve 2.8 million, and many of them are economically disadvantaged minority students who will lose access to the educational opportunities that they cannot get elsewhere. These students are non-traditional and need the extra assistance offered by these flexible programs. Supporting this amendment is supporting access and choice. Supporting this amendment is supporting educational opportunities for minorities. A yes vote is a vote for economically disadvantaged students. Many of them are the first in their families to attend college. These students who wish to have the opportunity to attend a flexible program that trains them to be the best they can be. I urge my colleagues to understand how important this is to be able to provide an opportunity for these young people in many instances. One incident, you cannot draw national conclusions because you know one student that did not finish. Well, you can pick the finest university and the most prestigious university in this country, and you can find examples. Let us be serious. We need to provide opportunities for people to be able to have a better quality of life. And on that note, I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment.
Gentleman,
on that note, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Ask unanimous consent to rise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I join a strong coalition of Democrats and Republicans in urging a yes vote on the Klein-Hastings amendment. I do so because I believe that every student should be guaranteed the right of knowing that he or she is going to get a high-quality education for every tuition dollar they spend, and because every taxpayer should be guaranteed that not one dime of Pell Grant or student money goes to any school under any ownership or management that does not properly spend the public's money. This is a goal that I believe is shared universally by each speaker on each side who has spoken here tonight. Our difference is not over whether we should guarantee students and taxpayers high quality and gainful employment. Our difference is over how to accomplish that. Here is my concern about the rule that has been proposed thus far. It is both under-inclusive and over-inclusive. To understand that, consider two schools. The first school successfully places 50% of its graduates in the job for which it's training people. So let's say it's a job in medical records technology, and 50% of the students from that school are placed successfully. That school has a tuition that generates a rate so that 7% of the graduate's income goes to pay back their student loan. The second school successfully places 90% of its graduates in the medical records technology field, but its tuition generates a repayment rate of 10%. So again, the first school only places half of its graduates in the job for which it's training people, and the second school places 90% of its jobs for which it's training people. Under this rule, the first school survives, and the second school is thrown out of the program. Let me say this again. The school with the 50% placement rate continues to get taxpayer dollars, but the school with the 90% placement rate doesn't. This doesn't make any sense, and it is the basis for our bipartisan objection. What should we do? If we're going to measure gainful employment, let's come up with a proposal that measures gainful employment. Let's ask the question that when students graduate from a school, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, or public, whether those students in fact gain employment and whether that employment raises their income and therefore is gainful. Let's measure what the law actually says. And finally, I think there is the issue of whom should make this decision. As Chairman Klein pointed out, as Mr. Hastings pointed out, as others have, the statutory phrase gainful employment has been with us for a very long time. But this Congress has never chosen to define it. So the issue here is a separation of powers issue. Who should determine what gainful employment means? Should it be an administrative agency, or should it be the duly elected representatives of the people? I think it should clearly be the duly elected representatives of the people. So I would urge my friends, both Democrat and Republican, to vote yes for a procedure that will correct this rule. Let us join together, Republicans and Democrats, and do a bill, work on legislation that will give us the kind of outcome that we should really have here. Now, why are we doing this? We're doing it so the person with 3 jobs gets fair treatment here. You all know her. She's the person who works 35 or 40 hours a week on her feet, and that's a full-time job. She's raising children, and that's a full-time job. And she's going to school, and that's a full-time job. Let's not put the additional burden of taking away or jeopardizing the quality school that she has chosen for herself. Everyone in this chamber, I believe, supports high-quality career education. Instead of a rule that subverts that principle, let's write a bill that advances that principle. Let's vote yes for the Klein-Hastings amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Klein. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Minnesota will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 11, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Pence of Indiana.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
I believe that ending an innocent human life is morally wrong. But I rise tonight because I also believe it's morally wrong to take the taxpayer dollars of millions of pro-life Americans and use it to fund organizations that provide and promote abortion, like Planned Parenthood of America. The American people deserve to know that Planned Parenthood is not only the largest abortion provider in America, Planned Parenthood is also the largest recipient of taxpayer funding under Title X. According to their latest annual report, Planned Parenthood received more than $363 million in taxpayer money, while boasting of having performed an unprecedented 324,008 abortions during the same period. The amendment that I bring to the floor tonight would deny any and all funding to Planned Parenthood Federation of America and its affiliates for the rest of the fiscal year. But let me be clear. This amendment would not cut funding for health services. It would simply block those funds already in the bill from subsidizing America's largest abortion provider. Now, I am aware that Title X family planning funds are eliminated in this bill, but eliminating Title X funding has never been my goal. I support the important work of Title X clinics across the country. Reality is that Planned Parenthood receives hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars from federal funding sources other than Title X. And our effort tonight is specifically to focus on denying any and all federal funding to the largest abortion provider in America. The reasons for doing so are many. The case for defunding Planned Parenthood has made headlines for years. In 2002, Planned Parenthood was found civilly liable in Arizona for failure to report statutory rape. Since that time, Planned Parenthood affiliates have been found violating reporting laws in Indiana, California, found to have violated statutory report laws in places like Ohio. Recently, California, Washington, New Jersey, and New York Planned Parenthood clinics have been accused of fraudulent accounting over billing practices. And, of course, last week, as the nation watched in horror, New undercover videos were released that showed Planned Parenthood employees in multiple states apparently willing to aid human sex traffickers by coaching them on how to falsify documents to secure secret abortions for underage prostitutes. You know, as the father of 2 teenage daughters, there are not words strong enough to portray my contempt for this pattern of fraud and abuse against young women by Planned Parenthood. And that's what brings us here today. Now, I know that some consider this amendment to be something of a war on Planned Parenthood. But this is not about Planned Parenthood's right to be in the abortion business. Sadly, abortion on demand is legal in America. This is about who pays for it. Nobody's saying that Planned Parenthood can't be the leading advocate of abortion on demand in America, but why do I have to pay for it? Nobody's saying that Planned Parenthood can't continue to be the largest abortion provider in America, but why do tens of millions of pro-life American taxpayers have to pay for it? Let me be clear as I come to the floor. I long for the day that Roe v. Wade is sent to the ash heap of history, when we move past the broken hearts and the broken lives of the past 38 years. But as this debate rages on, I call on my what has been the historic and overwhelming consensus of the American people, that we ought not to use their taxpayer dollars to provide or promote abortion at home and abroad. And let's end taxpayer support for abortion providers, specifically Planned Parenthood, once and for all. I urge my colleagues to take a stand for taxpayers and to take a stand for life, to take a stand against a pattern of corruption, and to take a stand for young women in crisis pregnancies who deserve access to unbiased and compassionate health care services. Let's end taxpayer support of Planned Parenthood. The Pence Amendment's purpose is to do simply that, and in so doing, to stand with the American people, to stand with the American taxpayer, and to stand without apology for the sanctity of human life. And I yield back.
Gentleman from Indiana yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Connecticut rise?
That's time in opposition.
The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, we were told by our Republican colleagues that they were here to create jobs, to turn the economy around, and to reduce the deficit. But here they go again, spending time on an extreme, divisive social agenda. In a breathtaking and radical step, the Republican majority has already proposed to eliminate Title X funding, which has connected millions of American women to health care since 1970. And now, this amendment by the congressman from Indiana continues the same pattern of contempt for women's health and basic rights. With this amendment, my colleague is trying to specifically exclude one provider of legal health services, Planned Parenthood, from federal funds. This amendment has nothing to do with the deficit. It is an attack by one congressman on one organization, and it needlessly puts the lives of American women in danger. Planned Parenthood carries out millions of preventive and primary care services every year. This includes immunizations and routine gynecological exams. This includes nearly 1 million screenings for cervical cancer, identifying more than 90,000 women who are at risk for cervical cancer. Cervical cancer every year kills 4,000 women. If you can identify the risk early on, then you can save a woman's life. Planned Parenthood cares for more than 3 million American men and women every year. In my state of Connecticut, more than 62,000 men and women benefit from health care at Planned Parenthood clinics. Over 70% of those patients have a family income of less than $16,200
$245 a year. In other words, this is the only way that they can afford care. In fact, 6 of every 10 women who seek care at a Title X funded center like Planned Parenthood consider it their main source of medical care. The vital preventive care and family planning services supported by Title X save money and save lives. For every dollar invested in Title X, taxpayers save just under $4. But under the guise of budget cutting, the new majority is launching an assault on Title X and endangering women's health. Understand their purpose. Understand it clearly, to impose their traditional view of a woman's role. This legislation is not about federal funding of abortion. Federal funds, including Title X, are already banned from going towards abortion services under the Hyde Amendment. Rather, much like the repeal of health care reform, this is part of a Republican agenda to force women back in traditional roles with limited opportunities. This amendment will cause more than 3 million people to lose access to basic primary and preventive health care. I am a cancer survivor. I'm a cancer survivor who was only here because my cancer was found in stage 1. And I can tell you that losing access to screening will cost lives and will kill women in this country. It comes down to this. The proposals to eliminate Title X, defund Planned Parenthood are bad policy that hurt women and do nothing for our economy. In fact, it costs money. This Republican Congress is trying to turn back the clock on women's health and turn back the clock on women's basic rights. They are taking us back to a day when family planning was not a given opportunity for women. And instead of making it harder for women to get health care, we should be standing up for these vital services. I encourage and urge my colleagues to defeat this amendment and yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio rise?
Madam Speaker, I ask to strike the last word and ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, every day Americans sit at their kitchen table and they do a number of things, including trying to figure out how to stretch that dollar, how to stop unnecessary spending. And they're asking us in Congress to do the same. And I look at this room as our kitchen table. And over the last week, we have debated that issue. How do we stretch the American tax-paying dollar? And tonight I rise in support of the Pence Amendment because it ensures that our precious tax dollars will no longer go to a group whose main purpose is to provide abortions. Make no mistake, Planned Parenthood is our nation's largest abortion provider. It receives 1/3 of its $1.1 billion from tax-paying Americans. For the sake of abortion, Planned Parenthood holds itself above the law, ignoring mandatory reporting requirements, skirting parental consent, and aiding and abetting child sexual trafficking. And, Madam Speaker, this hurts young girls in the process. 4 years of investigation shows 17 Planned Parenthood clinics in 10 different states facilitating the sexual exploitation of women. In 2008, the Mona Lisa Project showed 10 Planned Parenthood clinics in California, Indiana, Arizona, Tennessee, Alabama, and Wisconsin, ignoring mandatory reporting laws and finding ways to skirt parental consent laws, covering up sexual abuse so girls can get secret abortions. And I only wish this wasn't true, but in my own hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio, twice Cincinnati Planned Parenthood did just that. In one case, it was a father who brought his daughter to the abortion clinic. And when she was taken into the room, she told the abortion provider it was he who raped her. They did nothing. He's now in jail. We have an ongoing case right now of a coach that took a young girl to the clinic and said, "I'm her guardian." When later the parents took her to the doctor and the doctor said, "When did she have this abortion?" the parents were shocked. He's now on trial. So this isn't something that's out there of a wish come maybe. This is something that actually happened in my own city. In 2011, 7 Planned Parenthood clinics in New Jersey, Virginia, New York, and Washington, D.C. aided and abetted sexual trafficking of children, helping actors posing as pimps and prostitutes to manage an underage sex ring to get secret abortions, contraceptives, STD testing, and keep their commercial child rape business safe. Planned Parenthood called the behavior of a Richmond counselor who coached the pimp and the prostitute how to use judicial bypass to get secret abortions for their underage sex slaves professional. Like former Planned Parenthood Director Abby Johnson says, it's not a training problem, it's an ideology problem. Now, Planned Parenthood will tell you they're trying to prevent abortions. But last year alone, they performed 324,008 abortions and only prevented 283,000. You know, 1 in 10 Planned Parenthood clients receives an abortion. They are our largest provider of abortions in America. America's taxpayers are asking us to be wise with their dollars. When you ask the question, should we be paying for abortions, American taxpayers say no. Should we be providing America's largest abortion provider taxpayer funding to help keep its lights on, so on one side it can provide family planning services and on the other side provide abortions? I believe the folks at the kitchen table in America are saying no. Tonight in this chamber at America's kitchen table, I'm asking our members to say no to this practice and support the Pence Amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. What purpose does the gentlewoman from New York rise?
I rise to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairwoman, I rise in strong opposition to the amendment. Our constituents sent us here to create jobs. Instead, the majority is pushing an extreme right-wing agenda to limit women's health. In the course of considering the underlying bill that eliminates the federal family planning program, a member of the majority, in fact, another gentleman from Indiana, proposed providing birth control to horses. And now we're considering an amendment attacking Planned Parenthood, which has provided health services to 1 in 5 American women. So it seems to me that Republicans believe that horses should have family planning, but women should not. I strongly urge those who support this affront to women's health to clearly explain to their constituents that they want to make it harder to access Pap tests, breast exams, routine gynecological examinations, flu vaccinations, smoking cessation services, cholesterol screening, contraceptives, and all of the other services that Planned Parenthood provides. My friends, this is not about abortion. Federal law prohibits federal dollars from being spent on abortion. This amendment is about denying women access to basic health services. I oppose this amendment because we should be focusing on creating jobs and protecting women's health. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Gentlewoman yields back. What purpose does the gentlewoman from Minnesota rise?
I move to strike the last
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, who is bringing forward this tremendous amendment this evening for us to consider. I'm grateful for his willingness to bring this forward because this is a concerning issue for so many Americans, concerning on so many issues, and concerning for people as well who are concerned about the use of tax funds. There was an article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal in 2008 that was a fairly deep expose of Planned Parenthood and what Planned Parenthood was doing with their money, and I'd like to quote from that article. Flush with cash, Planned Parenthood affiliates nationwide are aggressively expanding their reach, seeking to woo more affluent patients with a network of suburban clinics and huge new health centers that project a decidedly upscale image. Executives say they're rebranding their clinics to appeal to women of means, a move that opens new avenues for boosting revenue and, they hope, new political clout. 2 elegant new health centers have been built. At least 5 more are on the way. The Planned Parenthood facility in Denver, Colorado is 52,000 square feet. They feature touches such as muted lighting, hardwood floors, and airy waiting rooms in colors selected by marketing experts. Planned Parenthood has also opened more than 24 quick-service express centers, many in suburban shopping malls, including my home state of Minnesota. Some Planned Parenthood sell jewelry. Some sell candles, books, and T-shirts right next to the contraception. It's indeed a new look. It's a new branding, says the president, Leslie Durgan, Senior Vice President at Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountain Clinic. Planned Parenthood is the nation's largest abortion provider. They reported a record $1 billion in annual revenues. 1/3 of that comes from the federal and state grants that we are discussing this evening. And the nonprofit entered their year with a surplus of $115 million, or 1/3 of the grants that they received from government, and with net assets of nearly $1 billion. In 2008, Planned Parenthood had 882 clinics nationwide. One of their competitors, and they do have independent for-profit competitors, said, Planned Parenthood is not unlike other big national chains. They put local independent businesses in a tough situation. Even as the total number of abortions in the United States has dropped, the number performed by Planned Parenthood has grown to nearly 290,000 a year. In 2005, Planned Parenthood accounted for 1 in every 5 abortions, and they are pushing to increase their market share. The president of Planned Parenthood of Rocky Mountain also said she's encouraged more Planned Parenthood clinics to offer abortions. Sarah Stutz, who heads the Planned Parenthood operation in my state of Minnesota, said she recently opened 3 express centers in wealthy Minnesota suburbs, in shopping centers and malls and places where women are already doing their grocery shopping, picking up Starbucks, living their daily lives, and stopping off for an abortion. I like to think of it as the lens crafter of family planning. Steve Trombley, the top executive of Illinois, said as he toured an express center a few doors down from a hair salon and a Japanese restaurant in the well-to-do suburb of Schaumburg, Illinois. The strategy draws new patients and money. In Illinois, for instance, Planned Parenthood officials say they take a loss of nearly $1 a packet on birth control pills that go to poor women under Title X. However, they make nearly $22 on each month of pills sold to an adult who can afford to pay full price out of pocket. And the majority of women who stop by the new Planned Parenthood in Schaumburg are in that group of affluent women. In 2008, Planned Parenthood's political action arm planned to raise $10 million to influence the fall campaigns. But under federal tax law, the health care wing of Planned Parenthood can't support political candidates, but they can mobilize voters, and they can advocate on issues like abortion rights and sex education in schools, all paid with federal grants. To encourage the new wave of patients to join the cause, an express center in Parker, Illinois sells political buttons next to the condoms and sets out invitations for political activism by the magazine rack. The center opening in Denver in 2008 uses 20% of their space for health care. 40% of their space they use for meetings, including political work.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California rise?
Chair, seek to strike the requisite words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I yield to my friend in the well.
Thank you.
As much.
Thank you. Thank you. In Portland, Oregon, a planned 40,000 square foot headquarters will include space for candidate forums and phone banks, as well as a clinic, again, all paid for with additional subsidy from the federal and state taxpayer. Mr. Greenberg said donors were initially skeptical about the size and $16.5 million cost, but eventually they came around because the building becomes a symbol for our outreach and a symbol for our community activism. Madam Speaker, it's clear, after extensive study and review by this Wall Street Journal article, what we're seeing today, Madam Speaker, is that Planned Parenthood is focused on political activity and they're focused on becoming big business. When you have the executive director of the Planned Parenthood in Illinois saying they want to become the lens crafter of big abortion, I think we should listen to them. If they want to become the lens crafter, then let them become the lens crafter. As my colleague Mr. Pence said, abortion is legal today in the United States, but the taxpayers shouldn't have to support it. And if they want to become the lens crafter, Planned Parenthood, a billion-dollar organization, should lose the $300 million they receive in federal grants, and they should also have their tax-exempt status seriously studied by the Internal Revenue Service. If they are competing with for-profit businesses and putting them out of business, then Planned Parenthood has no business holding a nonprofit status that benefits that organization. On any number of levels, Madam Speaker, this year, more than any other year, we need to completely defund Planned Parenthood and begin a process to end the tax-exempt status of this now profit-seeking, political-seeking organization, and I yield back.
For what purpose is the gentlewoman from